in the middle of the desert, underneath the hot sun, sitting on a upside down rusted car. It's awesome. And I don't know what it's doing here. I don't know why it's upside down or how long it's been here, but I thought this would be a great place to talk about Moeller Technique. First thing we're going to talk about is the motion of our arm. It's a stroke that's using our whole arm and our hands and our wrist. So this is what it is. That's the Moeller, and it's a most basic, the free stroke. We're going to be talking about what's actually happening in my arm as I'm doing this. And then in the next videos we're going to be talking about how do we extend this into doing. Okay, the first things we need to understand about Moeller Technique is the motion, and then how to apply that to a practice pad or a snare drum.
First things first!
The first thing we need to understand is the motion behind it. There's a reason why it's called the whipping motion. I also refer to it as a wave motion. And before we get into using our sticks at all, let's simply talk about the motion. The best example of this I can think of is breakdancing. When you see breakdancers do it, it's very fluid, but when you see a drummer doing it in a Moeller, the motion is obviously more compact. It's not as elaborate as that, but the same motion is still there. So we're going to start off by learning that motion in a very exaggerated way, and that's going to help you take that to the pad. Okay, so for the first exercise, you're going to need a few simple items that you all have at home. A cloth, maybe like a t-shirt or a towel, some water to wet that piece of cloth, and you're going to need an old upside down car. Okay, so just those three items, and we're going to start the exercise. All right, here we go. We got black handkerchief, some water, and an old upside down car. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the handkerchief and we're going to wet it. Okay, so now you have a wet handkerchief, and what you're going to do is, I'm sure you've done this before, is you're simply just going to whip the car. Now watch the motion of my arm as I do it. So you're creating a wave motion just like we talked about before, and you're transferring that motion to the tip of this handkerchief, and then you're whipping the car. Now what's important here is that you're noticing that I'm using my shoulder actually to make this motion, and the rest of my arm is loose. I'm just kind of flicking my whole arm. You may remember in like high school science a long time ago, but they taught us something called the law of thermodynamics. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're taking the energy of our large muscles of our upper arm, and we're transferring that motion, that energy, into through my arm, which is all very relaxed. It has to be, to transfer that energy. If it's stiff, nothing works. You can't, it just doesn't work. So you're transferring that energy into the relaxed limp part of your arm, and you're transferring that into your fingers and then into this wet handkerchief, okay? So once again, just get some water, get a cloth, and take a car, turn it upside down, and just whip away as much as you like. And just get comfortable with the motion. This is the whipping motion. That's why they call this stroke the Moeller whip, because it is a whip. It's not just they call it that for fun. You're learning how to use the drumstick as a whip and harnessing the larger muscles to make the strokes as opposed to relying on the little guys that will tire out. So I just realized I'm standing in the middle of the desert whipping an old rusted upside down car with a wet handkerchief. And I really hope there's someone in some of these mountains just watching me wondering, what the heck is that guy doing? Anyways, I'm having a great time, and I hope this helps you understand what the whipping motion is, and we're going to go next to the pad. Okay, you're back. So now that you got the idea of the motion, the whipping motion, and how you can apply it, how your whole arm comes into play here, simply transferring energy from one part of your arm to another, and you're relying on the bigger muscles of your arm as opposed to the small ones. Okay, so that's going to make this stroke very useful for you, because you can keep using it all night if you have a gig and you don't get tired. So that's really the great thing with Moeller Technique. It relies on the bigger muscles of your arm as opposed to the little ones, so you can play longer with more dynamics, and it's just a lot more fun. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is a short exercise that's going to get you used to transferring that energy to a drumstick. Here we are, the three-part exercise. What we're going to do first is we're going to put the tip on the top. We're going to use your right hand, put the tip on the top left corner of the drum, and you're going to drag it towards the bottom right. Okay, from top left to bottom right using your right hand. And while you're doing this, you're going to raise your elbow. So drag and raise your elbow just like that. That's step one. Once again, drag, raise elbow. Okay, now the second step is you're going to bend your wrist. Easy as that. So drag, step one. Second step, bend your wrist. All right, and the third step is the stroke itself. You're going to start by bringing your elbow in to your side, and you're going to let the motion travel all the way down to the drum tip and let the stick rebound at the end. So the stroke again is just that. So 3 parts. 1, raise your elbow, drag the tip. 2, bend your wrist. 3, the stroke. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Observe the motion of my arm. Notice it's the same as the whipping motion we did with a handkerchief, the same as that breakdancer, kind of. And go very slowly. I can't stress that enough. Do not rush this exercise. Just go slowly. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to remove the stick out of my hand. Observe the motion. See the whip happening? It's exactly the same as what we were talking about when we were whipping the handkerchief. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that's it. What we talked about today is the Moeller Technique, how to get the motion, just how to understand the motion and get your arms moving in that. We've learned how to whip a car with a bandana, and we've also learned a 3-part exercise that's going to get you using that whipping motion on a practice pad or drum. So keep working on it. Take your time. Please take your time. Please take your time. The slower you practice, the better. If you rush, you're only going to build in bad habits that you're going to take time to undo later on. So take your time, don't rush. If you practice, it's going to come. And in the future videos, we're going to get into how to apply this to triplets and beyond. So stay tuned. I'm Jag Cheval. Take care.